You're on a private jet, sipping sparkling water flown in from Iceland, headed to your third vacation this month, and yet you can't shake the feeling that something's off. That low hum in the back of your mind, the one that whispers, "Is this it?" Now hold on, that's not a sympathy card for the rich. But it is a real pattern. Because weirdly enough, the more money people seem to earn, the less happy they sometimes get. And not in a dramatic movie-style breakdown way, but in a slow, numbing, everyday kind of dissatisfaction. According to data from multiple global studies, once a person crosses a certain income threshold, about what you'd need to live comfortably without worrying about basic needs, the happiness curve doesn't keep rising. In some cases, it dips. So why? Why are people who have everything feeling like they have nothing? Let's start by zooming in on what money actually buys after a point. Not shelter, not food, not security, that's already covered. After that, money starts buying choices. But with every new choice comes a cost, decision fatigue, fear of missing out, and a strange psychological effect called the hedonic treadmill. That's the tendency for humans to return to a baseline level of happiness, no matter what positive things happen. You buy the dream house, you're thrilled. But 3 weeks in, it just becomes the house. Then you need something else. And again. And again. And here's where it gets worse. When everything's possible, nothing feels special. A new car doesn't mean much when you can buy 5. A weekend off isn't relaxing when you could take a year off. The boundaries between work and reward, stress and rest, they start to blur. You stop chasing joy and start managing boredom. And that, ironically, is exhausting. But this doesn't fully explain the weight some wealthy people carry. Because the dissatisfaction isn't just material, it's emotional, social, even existential. So what's really going on underneath? What happens to your mind and your relationships when your bank account is limitless? And is there a hidden trade-off we've all been ignoring? Let's dig deeper, not into bank balances, but into brains. Because wealth doesn't just change what you can afford. It changes how your mind works. Psychologists have found that as people accumulate extreme wealth, their perception of time, relationships, even trust begins to shift. It's not evil or dramatic, it's subtle, like the volume turning down on things that used to matter. Take time, for example. When you're rich, you're not counting hours to payday. But ironically, this abundance of time often leads to less satisfaction. Why? Because time starts to feel less valuable. You're not trading hours for rest, you're filling endless ones with distractions. And slowly, the clock stops ticking in a meaningful way. Now throw in relationships. Imagine never knowing whether someone wants to spend time with you or your money. That's not just paranoia, it's real. In high-income groups, trust scores in close relationships actually drop. You begin second-guessing praise, compliments, even invitations. Are they being nice or networking? Over time, some people pull away. Not because they're isolated, but because they feel safest alone. Loneliness wrapped in luxury. Social comparison plays a sneaky role too. You'd think once you make it, the competition fades. But no. It just moves. From comparing brands to comparing jets. From having a nice house to having a famous architect design it. As one study put it, people don't just want to be rich, they want to be richer than other rich people. And this never-ending ladder is impossible to climb because the top keeps shifting. And let's talk purpose. Most people grow up believing that financial success is the finish line. So when they hit it and still feel empty, it triggers something weird. A silent panic. Like the GPS saying, you've arrived, but there's nothing there. Some deal with it by doubling down, new goals, new businesses, new investments. Others spiral. They start questioning their worth outside of wealth. If you take away the titles, the applause, the luxury, who's left? So yes, the unhappiness isn't always visible. But it's there in the endless upgrades, the constant motion, the low-grade discontent no one talks about. But what happens when someone finally confronts that feeling head-on? What do they do when the game they've been winning suddenly feels like a trap? That moment, when someone with everything realizes it still isn't enough, isn't loud. It's quiet. A slow-burning, late-night kind of realization. Some describe it like standing in a crowded room but feeling completely alone. Others say it feels like being stuck in a loop where every win feels less exciting than the last. And this is where it gets real. Many of them start searching. Not for money, but for meaning. And they often don't know where to start. Here's where you'll see some big lifestyle shifts. People suddenly stepping back from giant careers, selling off assets, disappearing from the public eye, not because they're tired of the spotlight, but because they're tired of not knowing why they're even in it. Some chase spirituality. Others try philanthropy. And while donating a few million might sound noble, it's often less about generosity and more about urgency, a deep need to feel like their life actually impacts something beyond the next quarterly return. What's wild is that the science backs this. Studies have shown that people who engage in meaningful, pro-social activities like mentoring, teaching, or volunteering report higher levels of happiness than those who only focus on consumption even if they earn far less. In fact, one longitudinal study revealed that beyond a certain wealth point, the biggest predictor of well-being wasn't net worth, it was how much time you spend doing things that feel meaningful. So why don't more people pivot to this earlier? 2 reasons. First, identity. When your whole life has been built around being the successful one, stepping off the treadmill feels like failure even when it's actually growth. Second, fear. When you've used achievement as a coping mechanism for years, letting go of it feels like pulling the plug on your entire personality. But some people do manage to break out. They simplify. Not in a cheesy, minimalist aesthetic way, but in a real, almost radical way. Fewer decisions. Fewer things. More connection. More presence. And when they talk about it, they often say things like, "For the first time in years, I feel like myself again." So, what's the actual fix? Is there a way to chase success without losing yourself, or is that the trade-off no one wants to admit? So here's the truth, not dramatic, not doomsday, just honest. Wealth, beyond a point, doesn't guarantee happiness because happiness isn't just about what you have, it's about what you do, who you're with, and why any of it even matters. When people chase money as the end goal, they often forget that it's supposed to be the means. To freedom, to time, to deeper relationships, to creativity, to rest. But if you never stop chasing, you never actually use the freedom you've earned. Yes, some rich people end up unhappy, but not because money ruins them. It's because they never paused to ask what they actually wanted in the first place. They kept climbing, assuming the next rung would feel better. And it didn't. The treadmill kept moving. And eventually, even the victories felt like checkboxes instead of moments. The applause got quieter. The days got longer. And the mind got louder. The ones who figure it out don't do it all at once. It's usually slow, like a reset. They start saying no to things that used to excite them. Not because they're bored, but because they're done. Done proving, done performing. That's when they start focusing on alignment. Instead of what's the next big thing, they ask, what makes me feel fully present? Sometimes the answer is shockingly small. Picking up a hobby. Spending time with their kids. Cooking their own meals. Not for a social media detox. Just because it feels human again. And here's the plot twist, when they start living like that, their happiness actually starts rising. Not fast. Not loud. But steadily. It's as if all that noise in their heads finally makes room for a little peace. And they're not obsessed with the peak anymore, they're finally okay just being. There's a certain kind of joy and simplicity that money can't buy, but ironically, it sometimes takes money to realize that. So, can someone be rich and happy? Absolutely. But the happiness doesn't come from the wealth. It comes from what the wealth allows and whether you use that space to feed your soul or just fuel the same old insecurities in fancier clothes. If the money buys space to grow, to be present, to connect, it works. But if it only buys escape, comparison, and performance, it quietly backfires. So maybe the real question isn't why are so many rich people unhappy? Maybe it's this, what are you actually chasing, and would you still want it if no one else could see it?